Hey guys, it's Vanessa with Unmasked. So after a few more bits of information that have surfaced this week, I think we have a few more pieces to the puzzle. Before we get started, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you'll be notified of all of my upcoming videos. Also, YouTube will unsub you occasionally for some unknown reason, but they do. So please check to make sure you're still subbed. And last but not least, please share this video. All the things that help us be able to continue making videos. Okay, so if you haven't watched my video from last week, please do. It's only about 8 minutes long and it's linked in the description below. So the newer things that I'm sure most of you have heard of this week are the prison phone call with an inmate at the prison where Richard Allen was being held, the letter from Richard Allen to the judge asking for help getting a public defender, and Keegan Klein's trial continuance, which had some very interesting language. So first, in the recorded prison phone call, an inmate is discussing with a family member how they were told that someone was arriving at the prison and they needed to clean up the observation cell. He also stated that the guards were acting strange in his opinion and that he was told it was Richard Allen who had been transferred there and was on 24-hour watch with cameras on him at all times. The inmate on the phone said that the other prisoners were screaming at Allen and threatening him all night long and that he had basically just pretended to be asleep for the past 3 days. We've already been told from multiple sources that he has been in protective custody, and we know that they've had to move him multiple times. I don't think any of this is really surprising, and I think we all figured that's how this would be. I would definitely think that he would be on 24/7 watch considering the extremely high risk of something happening to him. Allen also wrote a letter to the judge asking for help in getting a public defender, citing the huge financial burden. And just listening to him or reading this letter where he's kind of whining and complaining about his situation and acting like his family is a huge concern was a bit repulsive. I mean, he wasn't thinking of them when he was allegedly committing these crimes he's been accused of, and his actions have destroyed multiple families, including his own. He writes to the judge that his wife had to abandon her job and their house for her safety. I do want to say that from what I've seen some places, I do think it's wrong and very dangerous for anyone to be coming at his wife or family when at this point there's absolutely nothing that we have to support that she had any knowledge. Also this week, Keegan Klein's attorney filed a motion to continue the jury trial that was scheduled for January 18th. Again, I stand by what I said last week and that I do believe it's clear that Keegan Klein snitched, which led to the searches and ultimately Allen's arrest. I'll get a little bit deeper into that in a second. In the motion, it states that the prosecutor has no objections, that the motion is not being made in order to unnecessarily delay the trial, and that Keegan Klein is, quote, currently engaged in negotiations, end quote. So let's all read between the lines. I do not believe that Richard Allen was arrested over tools. No offense to whoever, has talked about that or believes that. I think that that's a ridiculous story. I do not believe that his wife turned him in based on multiple factors. It does seem like certain things are being planted in social media intentionally to kind of confuse the narrative and maybe throw things off. However, I do not believe those two rumors at all. In my opinion, Keegan was miserable in prison and was just finally willing to talk. Klein has been complaining about how unhappy he's been in jail for months. We also know that he's been trying to trade information for money and favors from women writing to him. It's really not that much of a stretch to think that he's willing to snitch in exchange for dropping and reducing his charges and prison time. I have had some sources tell me that Klein has been snitching on multiple people. It's hard to kind of discern rumors from fact at this point, so I'm just trying to sit back and look at the facts and what we do know and kind of piece it together and use common sense. My personal opinion is that is the reason that the probable cause documents are currently sealed, because there are other names involved, and this is bigger, as Superintendent Carter kind of implied during the press conference. That would definitely make sense to me with the 5 counts being dismissed and other counts being reduced, and then the current negotiations that are ongoing. Now, whether or not those people will have any direct connection to what happened to Abby and Libby remains to be seen. This leads me to something that just gave me the chills this week. Now, we've all come into this case at different points and have different levels of knowledge. So this may be a repeat for some of you. However, I had no idea about this. So apparently back in February of 2020, there was a post on 4chan where someone implied that Bridge Guy was a Delphi local named Richard. He later tried to say that it was a typo, and it ended up sparking a bunch of memes about the killer named Richard. There's been a bit of discussion on who that would have been. Some people wonder if it was Richard himself, and some are speculating that it was Keegan Klein. I personally think that it would have been Keegan, but regardless, it's very interesting. And again, there's just too many coincidences for them to be coincidences. As we know, Keegan said that 2 people had access to the Anthony Shots account and the Dropbox. At first, I wondered if Libby's Snap Map had gave away their location, but that feature didn't come out for another 4 months after the girls were killed. The last photo of Abby on the bridge was 2:07, and I believe the last activity was at 2:13 p.m. So I'm back to my original theory that they were catfished into a trap, and instead of seeing, Anthony Shots walking down the bridge to meet them, they were met with this creepy middle-aged man. I keep seeing comments where people are insisting that the girls were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. I believe without a doubt that this was all premeditated. Once you start putting these pieces together, there are too many coincidences, yet again, for it to be many other ways. For example, we know that Keegan Klein has admitted to talking to the girls through the Anthony Shots account on February 12th, the night before they were killed. We also know that the girls were up late that night and slept in a bit the next morning. We also know that he denies talking to them the day they went missing, but that account was snapping the girls that day. We can assume from that information that it was likely Richard Allen who was using the Anthony Shots account on February 13th. I think both he and Allen planned this out. Even if it was just the night before, I believe it was premeditated. If you take those things into consideration, you have to take into account that all of these people from the Delphi community saying that they're so shocked are partially shocked because they regularly interacted with Richard Allen at CVS, local bars, etc. I think it's safe to assume that the girls would have recognized him when he got close enough and they got a solid look at his face. He's looking down the whole time. They were creeped out. They were kind of in shock. So maybe they didn't recognize him until he got much closer and looked up at them. Unless I'm missing something here, that's what I've been gathering from the community members' statements. So again, I do think this was premeditated, and I do think the intent was murder. Otherwise, they would have recognized him and been able to identify him if he didn't kill them. If you guys have different thoughts on this, please let me know in comments. For those recent reports the past few days, with a lot of speculation that a detective revisited an old tip on Richard Allen that he felt needed revisiting, that could absolutely be true. But I would assume that that tip either led to Keegan Klein or the reverse, and the tip was revisited after speaking to Keegan Klein. Bottom line, those two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. And again, that sure is a lot of coincidences if Richard Allen was simply a lone wolf and there's zero connection to the timing and conversations with Keegan Klein. And I have to say, as I was putting this video together, I was thinking about how Richard Allen's blood must have just run cold when he discovered, along with everyone else, that Libby had the wherewithal to get a video of him with his image and his voice. Imagine him seeing that on the news and knowing that all of his friends and family are listening to it as well over and over. All of his customers, all of the people that see him every day. It makes me wonder if that is why he came forward to police, allegedly, and placed himself on the trails that day, and if that's also why he would have checked himself in somewhere shortly after the murders. It also makes me wonder if Richard Allen's fear at some point changed to cockiness with the passage of time and getting away with hiding in plain sight. It almost seems that way to me, but I guess we'll find out in time. Now, keep in mind there's been a lot of discussion also around the charges on Richard Allen. In Indiana, which does have the death penalty as we know, an accomplice can also be charged with murder. So there is also a lot of talk on the possibility of Richard Allen being the accomplice, but not the actual killer. Could that be the reason for the probable cause documents being temporarily sealed? I guess anything's possible. I don't know whether it's not my instinct, but definitely could be possible. I'm not sure why some people are so condescending and shut down that idea so quickly, however, because at this point, we just don't know. Also, when it was disclosed this week that there were 2 dark articles of clothing taken from Richard Allen's home in October, I did wonder, as I'm sure many of you did as well, if those articles of clothing could be the navy jacket and jeans to compare with Bridge Guy. So what are the parts of this case that drive you nuts or confuse you? I would happily address those and break it all down for you. It is a ton of information and details over a 6-year period. I notice a lot of people are trying to play catch up and get all the facts in, and it's a lot of information to take in. So please let me know in comments below what you'd like me to touch on regarding this case. If you have anything you don't want to leave publicly, like I've received since the last video, please email me at unmaskedtruecrime@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe and see you next video.